This lecture looks at how the ideas of Marx and Weber have been developed in the work on class and inequality by two famous French sociologists, Emile Durkheim and Pierre Bourdieu. First, it'll explain how Durkheim's writing about class inequality is connected to his work on the division of labour in society. Second, it'll outline Bourdieu's conception of class and explain how this is related to his broader sociological project and to his other key concepts such as capital, habitus and field. Like Marx and Weber, Durkheim also wrote on class and inequality. However, his contribution to this topic has not had the profile or influence of Marx's and Weber's work. One of the main places where Durkheim discussed class was in his book, The Division of Labour. This was concerned with analysing the development of a new and complex division of labour, which had developed in Europe with the Industrial Revolution, and the implications of this for individual autonomy and social cohesion. The book had three main parts. First, Durkheim compared traditional or pre-industrial societies with industrial societies in terms of their social solidarity. By social solidarity, Durkheim meant the bonds that united people together and made the continuity of societies possible. He argued that traditional societies had a relatively simple division of labour and people were generally bound together through commonly held customs, moral beliefs and norms, which induced conformity and structured daily life. By contrast, industrial societies had a complex division of labour, with occupational specialisation as the basis of social solidarity. In this complex division of labour, individuals were highly dependent on each other and on society to fulfil their various needs and functions. Second, Durkheim provided an explanation of how the later industrial societies had evolved out of the earlier pre-industrial societies. He argued that as populations grew and transport and communication links increased, more individuals were brought into contact and interaction with each other. While this could put pressure on the environment and heighten competition between people for scarce resources, Durkheim argued that the increasing specialisation of occupations enabled different groups to more easily coexist and make use of different resources. Third, Durkheim analysed three abnormal forms of the division of labour in industrial societies where they didn't produce the social solidarity he expected. This is where he addressed the topic of class and inequality. The first abnormal form of the division of labour was the anomic division of labour. Here, Durkheim argued that rapid industrialisation combined with poor economic planning and industrial relations policy had resulted in economic crises, bankruptcies, class conflict, industrial restructuring and meaningless regimented forms of work. The second abnormal form of the division of labour was the forced division of labour. Here Durkheim argued that inequality external to the division of labour itself had endangered social solidarity. Durkheim focused on two main forms of the inequality generated by forces other than the division of labour itself. The first involved a mismatch between the distribution of natural talents in the society and the social functions assigned to them. In other words, some naturally talented people were deprived of suitable higher level work, while others with little talent were underachieving in the positions they were allocated. Durkheim saw this as a class issue where talented members of the lower classes were denied the opportunities that members of the higher classes had. He attributed one form of class conflict to lower class attempts to open up higher social positions which were otherwise closed to them. He believed that the division of labour would only produce social solidarity when social inequalities exactly expressed natural inequalities. The second form of inequality that Durkheim discussed was unequal exchange, particularly unequal contracts between people where the price of the good or service bore no relation to its actual cost or value. This could occur when the contracting parties were in unequal bargaining positions. Durkheim wrote that if one class in society is obliged, in order to live, to secure the acceptance by others of its services, while another class can do without them because of the resources already at its disposal, then the latter group can lord it over the former. This was particularly true when unequal social positions were hereditary and when the law itself sanctioned all kinds of inequalities. The third abnormal form of the division of labour that Durkheim discussed had no specific name. However, it involved the poor allocation and coordination of work so that production was disrupted, workers were unoccupied and social solidarity broke down. Durkheim's overriding belief was that these disruptions to social solidarity had more to do with the difficulties of transition from pre-industrial to industrial societies rather than to instability and inequalities generated by the structure of capitalism itself. The second famous French sociologist we're looking at is Pierre Bourdieu, who lived from 1930 to 2002. He became a sociologist after military service in Algeria in the 1950s, where he saw the impact of war, capitalism and colonialism on Algerian society. Bourdieu had an abiding interest in the study of social inequality and the way that it's masked and perpetuated in society. He saw social inequality as being organised around class inequality. He defined class divisions in terms of the different conditions of existence in which people live. These conditions of existence provided people with different endowments of power or capital or resources, and through their social conditioning, different sets of dispositions for how they would live. Bourdieu defined class as the set of all biological individuals who, being the product of the same objective conditions, have the same habitus or dispositions. He went on to say that a social class in itself, a class of identical or similar conditions of existence and conditionings, is at the same time a class of biological individuals having the same habitus, understood as a system of dispositions common to all products of the same conditionings. For Bourdieu, the dispositions that people acquire depend on the social positions they occupy in society, and in particular their endowment of various types of capital. Capital is any resource which enables a person to accumulate profit from their participation or contest in a given social arena, such as a school, labour market, workplace, artistic milieu, or scientific field. Bourdieu distinguished four main forms of capital that are used in this struggle. First, economic capital, which includes money, financial assets and material goods. Second, cultural capital, which includes titles, awards, qualifications and scarce cultural knowledge. Third, social capital, which includes connections with prominent or influential people. Fourth, symbolic capital, which includes social legitimation, honour and respect. Bourdieu identifies the social positions of different individuals or groups by the overall volume and composition of capital they have. Thus, old wealthy families might be high in both economic and cultural capital, while newly rich people might have high economic capital but low cultural capital. Members of the lower classes might be low in both economic and cultural capital. Bourdieu also noted that the volume and composition of capital can vary over time, and this can mark the trajectory of a person's social biography. He argued that the uneven conditions of existence in which people live and their different endowments of capital conditioned them to develop a particular kind of habitus, which refers to a set of durable and transposable dispositions which shaped people's perceptions, judgments and actions in the world. This habitus is structured by past and present conditions, but it also structures a person's practices across different areas of their lives. An individual's habitus will shape their orientation to the work they do, their leisure activities they engage in, the television and films they watch, the books and magazines they read, their internet habits, whether they go to art galleries and which ones, which sports they're interested in, what parts of the city they find interesting and attractive, just to mention a few examples. Bourdieu also emphasised that society should be seen as divided up into different spheres or fields, such as the economy, politics, art, science and religion. Each of these fields has its own structure of positions, rules, requirements and forms of authority, rather than there being a single society-wide set of rules of the game, to use Bourdieu's expression. Fields are arenas of struggles between individuals and groups seeking to preserve or change the existing distribution of capital within that field. Such struggles within a field could occur, for example, in the field of art between the art establishment and the avant-garde, or in the field of academic economics between the economic establishment and dissident economists over positions, title, authority and economic rewards. Importantly, Bourdieu thought that all these sorts of struggles should be understood as fundamentally driven by a quest for recognition and dignity. He thought that people invested considerable effort in the pursuit of a distinctive place, name and function within society in order to escape the finitude, contingency and absurdity of human existence. He wrote that with investment in a game and the recognition that can come from cooperative competition with others, the social world offers humans that which they most totally lack, a justification for existing. For Bourdieu, it is this competitive quest for recognition, necessarily involved a willingness to be exposed to the judgment of others, that recreates the differences and hierarchies lying at the heart of social existence. These, in turn, wrote Bourdieu, are part of the continuing interplay between success and failure, recognition and misrecognition, distinction and pretense, that oscillate through human lives. In summary, in Emile Durkheim's writings about differences and changes in the division of labour between pre-industrial and industrial societies, he argued that a more complex division of labour normally led to greater social solidarity, but he recognised abnormal forms of the division of labour which were connected to class inequality. In the anomic division of labour, class conflict resulted from rapid industrialisation, poor economic planning and inadequate regulation of industrial relations. In the forced division of labour, class conflict resulted from unjustified class inequalities in access to social positions and unequal exchange founded on pre-existing class inequalities. Third, Pierre Bourdieu later defined class in terms of the different conditions people live in, which provided them with different endowments of power or capital, different conditioning and different sets of dispositions for perceiving, judging and acting in the world. Fourth, his concept of class is interrelated with his concepts of capital, habitus and field, which together help explain how class relations structure people's social struggles for recognition, dignity and social meaning.